The sandwich was a Vorath 7 special, pressed grain, something that wanted to be mustard when it grew up, and a protein slab that the vendor had described as cured. I didn't ask cured of what. I was retired. My standards had adjusted accordingly. Pepper was asleep under the bench. Not fully asleep, her ear ticked when the PA system ran its boarding call for the Lethus connector. But close enough. She was 12 years old, and she'd decided some years back that the universe owed her a certain quantity of horizontal time per day, and she was going to collect it whether or not we happened to be in a spaceport. Her muzzle was gray. Her paws were crossed. She made a sound now and then that was somewhere between a sigh and an editorial comment on the state of the transit hall. I'd done 22 years in the Exterior Survey Corps. I'd cataloged 7 new contact events, 2 of which had involved species that were actively hostile on first approach and required a great deal of careful work before anyone stopped shooting. I had a pension, a Transit Class 4 pass good for the inner 4 systems, and a Beagle who had been with me for the last 9 of those 22 years. And I was going to Denmark Station to visit my sister, and I was very much not looking for any kind of incident. The Vorath delegation came through the main arch at 1340, which was 40 minutes before my departure gate opened. I'd seen Vorath before, worked adjacent to a consular team, once briefly, on the Meridian reclassification. So I knew the silhouette. Tall, chest-plated in ceremonial polymer, faces structured around a secondary jaw that made their resting expression look like mild disapproval, even when they were, apparently, pleased. 8 of them filed in with the kind of authority that expected a corridor to form around it. A corridor did form. That's how Vorath walk. The transit hall had been half full of mixed-species travelers. Within about 30 seconds, it was a lot more spacious. They stopped roughly 12 meters from my bench. There was some kind of procedural delay with their documentation. One of the functionaries was working a handheld and looking progressively less satisfied with what it was telling him. The rest of the delegation stood around doing what delegations do, which is look significant. One of them noticed Pepper. He was young for a Vorath. Secondary jaw not yet fully plated. The posture of someone still performing rank, rather than wearing it naturally. He said something to the officer beside him, low and in Vorath primary, which I can understand moderately well, and which translated, roughly, to an inquiry about what that small ground animal was, and whether it was ill. His colleague looked, made a sound I recognized as a Vorath expression of mild contempt. Earth animal, the colleague said, in trade standard this time, loudly enough that it was clearly intended for me to hear. They bring them everywhere, companion animals. They consider them significant. The young one crouched down for a better look at Pepper. He was maybe 4 meters away. Pepper opened one eye. The young Vorath made a sound that, on his species, indicated finding something non-threatening to the point of absurdity. A kind of structural laugh, not unkind but dismissive in the way that very large things are sometimes dismissive of very small ones. It's ancient, he said. It barely functions. Most of their companion animals are this way, the colleague confirmed. Soft, dependent, a cultural attachment. The humans assign them. And then there was a Vorath primary word I didn't have an exact translation for, but which meant something like, narrative weight they haven't earned. Pepper's other eye opened. I ate the last of the pressed grain sandwich and folded the wrapper. Pepper was looking at the young Vorath with the expression she used for everything. The same soft, unrushed, wholly unbothered appraisal she gave to luggage carts, to strange dogs, to the particular alien fauna on the 7th survey that had made very poor decisions. The expression communicated nothing, except that she had considered the situation, and found it unworthy of changing her position. The young officer reached out a hand toward her. I didn't say anything. I'd learned, a long time ago, that saying something in that moment changes what the next few seconds teach. Pepper looked at the hand. She looked at the officer, put her chin back on her paws. The young Vorath pulled his hand back. He had the look of someone who'd been expecting a reaction, and received instead a complete and indifferent assessment of his structural worth. He stood up, uncomfortable in a way he probably couldn't name, and rejoined his colleague. "What breed designation?" the colleague asked. "Canis lupus familiaris," I said. "Subspecies, they call them beagles." Scent hounds originally, bred for tracking. The colleague processed this with the expression of someone receiving information they'd already ranked as irrelevant. Tracking of what? Anything, I said. Everything. Depends on what you point them at. He made the dismissive sound again and turned away. There was a brief exchange in Vorath Primary among 2 or 3 of the other officers. Tones I recognized as amusement, something equivalent to a joke at the expense of human sentimentality. And then they returned their attention to the documentation problem, or went back to dozing. I was checking my gate number when the 8th member of the delegation came through the arch. He was older. The polymer plating on his chest bore a different insignia from the others, an administrative mark I knew, because I had had reason to learn Vorath rank structure during the Meridian work. Intelligence Directorate, senior level. He walked differently from the rest of the delegation, not the performed authority of the young officers, but something quieter and more final. The way people move when they've stopped needing to demonstrate anything. He was scanning the all with professional habits of someone who does it automatically without thinking. The way I check sightlines in any new room, the way Pepper checks wind. He saw Pepper. He stopped walking. It was not a dramatic stop. It was the kind of stop that has nothing theatrical in it. The kind that happens when a brain that is very good at its job receives a piece of information and pauses to verify it before proceeding. He looked at Pepper for perhaps 3 seconds. Then he looked at me. I looked back. Pepper's tail moved once. Slow. The kind of wag that doesn't mean excitement. The kind that means, I see you, I've assessed you, you may pass. The intelligence chief looked at his delegation. He said 3 things in rapid Vorath Primary. I caught 2 of them clearly. First was a directional instruction, a gate number, telling them to proceed ahead. The second was a word I'd only heard used twice in my career. It's an old word, Vorath Primary, not in most modern trade references. It translates, best as I can render it, as, the ground is not what you think it is, and you should not be standing here. The delegation moved. Not with any urgency that would have been visible to someone not watching for it. Just a smooth, professionally unremarkable, rerouting toward the far corridor. The kind of movement that doesn't attract attention because it isn't running, it's simply no longer here. The intelligence chief remained for a moment. He looked at me again. A very specific look. The kind shared between 2 people who are each old enough to recognize what the other one is. The look that skips the introduction because neither party needs it. He dropped his chin slightly, a minimal acknowledgement, the Vorath equivalent of, I know what that is, I know who you are, and I think we have both made good choices today. I nodded. He went to join his delegation. Her sighed, and shifted her weight and went fully back to sleep. Both eyes closed, both ears at rest, the slow rise and fall of her ribs, steady and indifferent to everything the universe had recently offered her. My gate opened at 14:20. Put on my jacket, picked up my bag, clipped Pepper's lead. She stood, stretched in that ancient Beagle way, front paws forward, back end up, a luxury of a thing, unrelated to any urgency, shook herself once from nose to tail, sneezed at the recycled air, and then looked up at me with the expression that wanted to know if there was going to be food at this new place we were going. Probably, I said. We walked to the gate. At the far end of the terminal, the Vorath delegation boarded their connector without incident. The intelligence chief didn't look back. Some of the other travelers had drifted back into the hall. Most of them had probably noticed nothing. A man and his old dog, waiting on a bench, happened everywhere, completely unremarkable, which was, as anyone who had read the file would tell you, exactly the point.